Every crime leaves a trail of evidence. Every criminal leaves a trace. This is Felonies Uncovered.
Kevin Mitnick, the hacker who changed cybersecurity forever. Before ransomware attacks, before massive corporate data breaches, before cybercrime became one of the biggest security threats in the world, there was a name that became synonymous with hacking: Kevin Mitnick. To federal investigators, he was one of America's most wanted computer criminals. To the media, he became a symbol of a new kind of threat. A criminal who did not need a weapon. A criminal who could break into systems without ever touching the building. But behind the headlines was a much more complicated story. A story about technology, curiosity, deception, and a world that was still learning how vulnerable computers could be. This is the story of Kevin Mitnick, a hacker whose case changed the way the world thought about cybersecurity. In the early days of personal computers and the internet, technology was advancing faster than the laws designed to control it. Companies were connecting their systems. People were sharing information electronically, and a new digital world was being created. But with every new technology came new opportunities for criminals, and investigators were about to face a challenge they had never encountered before. How do you investigate a crime when the evidence exists inside a computer? How do you track someone who can move through networks instead of streets? And how do you stop someone who understands the system better than the people trying to protect it? Long before he became a famous name in cybersecurity, Kevin Mitnick was simply fascinated by how things worked. As a teenager growing up in California, he became interested in telephone systems and the technology that connected people across the country. He learned how phone networks operated, how information moved, and how the systems behind everyday communication could be manipulated. This early curiosity introduced him to a world known as phone phreaking. Phone phreaks explored telephone networks, often searching for ways to understand and experiment with the technology. For some, it was a hobby. For others, it became a path toward illegal activity. Mitnick's curiosity would eventually move beyond phones and into the emerging world of computer networks. And as technology evolved, so did the methods used to exploit it. The story of Kevin Mitnick was no longer just about computers. It was about trust. Because investigators would later argue that one of his most powerful tools was not a piece of software. It was human psychology. The ability to convince people to reveal information. The ability to manipulate conversations. The ability to turn a simple interaction into a security breach. This technique would become known as social engineering. And it would change the way companies thought about protecting their systems. But before Kevin Mitnick became one of the most famous hackers in history, investigators first had to understand the person behind the computer screen. When people think about hacking, they often imagine someone sitting in a dark room, typing complicated code into a computer. But investigators discovered that one of Kevin Mitnick's most powerful tools was not technology. It was human behavior. The technique became known as social engineering. Social engineering is the practice of manipulating people into giving away information or access that they normally would protect. Instead of breaking through a digital wall, the attacker convinces someone to open the door. During the early days of computer networking, many companies focused on protecting their machines, but did not realize that their employees could become the weakest point in their security. A phone call, a convincing story, a person pretending to be someone they were not. These simple methods could sometimes reveal valuable information. As investigators examined Mitnick's activities, they alleged that he used these types of techniques to gain access to restricted information and computer systems. His methods highlighted a major problem in cybersecurity. Technology could be protected with passwords and security software, but people could still be manipulated. This idea changed the way companies approached security. They began training employees to recognize suspicious requests, verify identities, and understand that cybersecurity was not only a technical problem. It was also a human problem. But as Mitnick's reputation grew, so did the attention surrounding him. What began as computer exploration was becoming a federal investigation, and soon, Kevin Mitnick would become one of the most recognizable names in the history of hacking. As Kevin Mitnick's activities expanded, so did the attention from law enforcement. During the 1980s and early 1990s, investigators were entering a new era of crime. Computers were becoming more powerful, networks were growing, and criminals were finding new ways to exploit technology. The challenge was unlike anything investigators had faced before. Traditional crimes left traditional evidence: fingerprints, witnesses, physical objects. But computer crimes left a different kind of trail: digital records, network activity, electronic communications. Investigators had to learn how to follow evidence that existed inside machines and across communication networks. Mitnick became the focus of multiple investigations involving allegations of unauthorized access to computer systems, theft of software and information, and violations of federal computer laws. Authorities argued that his actions caused financial losses and created security concerns for several organizations. As the investigation developed, Mitnick's ability to avoid detection added to his growing reputation. The media began portraying him as a symbol of the new digital criminal. To some, he represented the dangers of a connected world where a person behind a computer could reach places they could never physically enter. To others, he represented the uncertainty of a time when society was still trying to understand the difference between curiosity, exploration, and criminal behavior in the digital age. But the investigation was not only about one person. It was about a larger question. How should the law respond when technology creates an entirely new type of crime? By the early 1990s, federal investigators were determined to find Mitnick. The case would become one of the most famous cybercrime investigations in American history, and the search for Kevin Mitnick was about to become a nationwide story. By the early 1990s, Kevin Mitnick had become one of the most recognizable names in the world of computer crime. But his reputation was not built only on court records and investigations. It was also shaped by the media. Headlines portrayed him as a symbol of a new digital threat. The idea that someone could sit behind a computer and access information from miles away captured public attention at a time when most people were still learning what the internet could do. For law enforcement, however, the focus was not the legend. It was the evidence. Investigators worked to track his movements, identify his online activity, and build a case based on documented incidents of unauthorized access and computer-related offenses. The investigation became increasingly complex because the tools used by criminals were evolving faster than traditional law enforcement methods. Digital communication could cross borders, computer systems could be accessed remotely, and suspects could disappear without leaving the kind of physical evidence investigators were used to finding. In 1995, after years of investigation, authorities located and arrested Kevin Mitnick in North Carolina. The arrest followed an investigation that involved multiple agencies and assistance from computer security experts, including Tsutomu Shimomura, whose own systems had been targeted in an earlier incident. When Mitnick was taken into custody, the case immediately became a national story. The government described him as a serious threat to computer security. Supporters of Mitnick argued that the media portrayal had exaggerated his abilities and turned him into a larger-than-life figure. The truth was more complicated. Kevin Mitnick's case existed at the intersection of crime, technology, and a society trying to understand a new digital frontier. His arrest would begin the next chapter of the investigation: courtroom battle over responsibility, punishment, and the future of computer crime. After leaving prison, Kevin Mitnick's story took an unexpected direction. The man once known around the world as a famous hacker began rebuilding his reputation in a completely different field. Instead of using his knowledge to bypass security, he began teaching organizations how to defend against the same techniques he once understood so well. Mitnick became a cybersecurity consultant, author, and speaker. His focus was on one of the biggest lessons from his own case: security is not only about computers, it is about people. Companies could install advanced software and build stronger networks, but one employee sharing the wrong information could still create a major vulnerability. This idea became even more important as the internet expanded. Businesses moved more information online. Personal data became more valuable, and cybercriminals developed new ways to exploit trust. Mitnick's work in cybersecurity focused heavily on social engineering, the same human element that had made him famous during his criminal career. He warned organizations that attackers often do not begin by breaking through technology. They begin by manipulating people. A convincing phone call, a fake identity, a carefully planned conversation. These techniques became a major focus of modern cybersecurity training. Over time, public perception of Kevin Mitnick became more complicated. To some, he remained a convicted hacker whose actions caused real consequences. To others, he became an example of someone who used his knowledge to help improve the very systems he once challenged. His story became a case study in the evolution of cybercrime, a reminder that technology can change faster than society can adapt. The Kevin Mitnick case was not just about one hacker. It was about the beginning of a new age of crime, an age where the battlefield moved from the physical world into the digital one. The story of Kevin Mitnick is not only the story of a hacker, it is the story of a world discovering that crime could evolve with technology. In the early days of the internet, many people believed cybersecurity was mainly a technical challenge. Build better software, create stronger passwords, protect the machines. But the Mitnick case revealed a different reality. The biggest weakness in a security system was often not the computer. It was the human being using it. The case helped bring attention to social engineering, a threat that remains one of the biggest challenges in cybersecurity today. Criminals no longer need to force their way through a system. Sometimes, they only need to convince someone to give them access. The lessons from cases like Mitnick's influenced how companies train employees, protect sensitive information, and respond to digital threats. His story also raised important questions that continue today. When someone discovers a weakness in technology, are they a criminal, a researcher, or both? When does curiosity become a crime? And how should society balance innovation with responsibility? Those questions became more important as the internet grew into a part of everyday life. Today, cybercrime affects governments, businesses, and millions of individuals around the world. The methods have changed, but the fundamental lesson remains the same. Technology is only as secure as the people and systems protecting it. Kevin Mitnick's journey from one of the world's most famous hackers to a cybersecurity professional remains one of the most unusual transformations in the history of computer crime. His case changed the conversation about digital security. It showed that the future of crime would not only happen on streets and in buildings. It would also happen inside networks, databases, and the devices we use every day. This was the story of Kevin Mitnick. On July 16, 2023, Kevin Mitnick passed away at the age of 59 after a battle with pancreatic cancer. To some, he was remembered as one of the most notorious hackers who exposed the weaknesses of some of the world's largest technology systems. To others, he became an example of transformation, turning a past defined by illegal access and deception into a career focused on cybersecurity, education, and helping organizations protect themselves from the very threats he once represented. Kevin Mitnick's story remains complicated. It is a story of curiosity, obsession, mistakes, consequences, and ultimately reinvention. His actions changed the way people viewed computer security and helped shape conversations about the importance of protecting information in a connected world. Whether viewed as a criminal, a pioneer, or a symbol of redemption, his impact on cybersecurity history cannot be ignored. This has been the story of Kevin Mitnick.
Behind every investigation is a story waiting to be uncovered, a trail of evidence, a search for the truth.